Okay, I've done a few videos recently about sacred geometry, even ones that connect different odd things that you wouldn't think of, like music. Got a weird reaction of a few people on that, and so I thought this might be an easier way. I had a friend over and I showed him it, and he goes, "Oh, I understand it very easily from that. That's weird that they have that. That's amazing." And so I thought I'd show it and share it with you. I'll try to do it with limited break-ins, kind of like I did when I was explaining it then.
Let's go to ancient Greece, to the time of Pythagoras, the master egghead of them all.
Pythagoras?
The father of mathematics and music.
Mathematics and music?
Ah, you'll find mathematics in the darndest places. Watch. First, we'll need a string. Stretch it good and tight, plunk it. Now divide in half. Plunk again. You see? It's the same tone, one octave higher. Now
That's the way you get octaves in strings. On your guitar that you always see, there's always a double dot spot at one spot up there. You'll notice that there are little markers going up where people have put their fingers all at, and then there's little bars everywhere across it. Those little metal bars make sure that whenever you press it just behind it, that it's making a string from exactly that point to the end. So it's in tune with it, as long as your guitar is in tune. When you get that bending sound, you can tell when you bend up and it adds pressure to the string. But the octave that he just pulled off is just like you were to do open on a guitar and then 12th fret. It gives another octave. Now you can't do any more on that string, but ironically, 5 frets up from each string is the tone that you tune the next string below it to, all except for the one from right before the last. So effectively, to get that octave, you can go to the 3rd string, 2nd fret, and you'll still be doing that octave that would have been the 12th fret of that low string. Dom, ding, ding is also on the 3rd string down from the top, 2nd fret. Now he's going to go up another higher, and you can do that same thing in that same ratio and go up higher. And this is how somebody's playing keys up through the scales.
divide the next section. And the next. Pythagoras discovered the octave had a ratio of 2 to 1. With simple fractions, he got this.
And that is the sound that maybe some of you remember from Grease, the movie, where they have the little xylophone and they're doing it before they call out everything in the morning over the intercom. Doom, 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 doom. Well, what is that? Well, it's part of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, the scale that we all use. But if you'll look at this, there is, here, let me put finger of God at it here. There is a gap that's right here. There's a gap that's right here, and there are 2 gaps that are right here. Now, we're going to fill it in with the major scale, and you're going to notice it is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And all of those notes are always the same, except for one out of those notes. And sometimes it's one of the in-betweens or the double at the end there, but the octaves are always the same. And this makes the different scales that are all named for ancient people and places around the Greeks and so on of ancient times. You have Locrian, Lydian, Dorian, Phrygian. We all talked about the Phrygian caps and things like that. All goes from that, and it gives you a little flair of a sound. Some of them sound very Egyptian, some sounds very sorrowful, some sound very uplifting. There was a chord that praised the Lord. We're looking at it. Let's continue.
And from this harmony in numbers developed the musical scale of today.
Oops.
By golly, you do find mathematics in the darndest places.
Yeah, you can imagine how much math is actually equated in everything. In fact, you don't think of it. People walk around in temples, but that temple is all built on math and so much more. We'll kind of roll all the way around through that thought, though. Let's go.
Imagine how excited Pythagoras was when he shared his findings with his pals, a fraternity of eggheads, known as the Pythagoreans. They used to meet in secret to discuss their mathematical discoveries. Only members were allowed to attend. They had a secret emblem, the Pentagram.
And a secret handshake.
Let's see what the topic is for today.
Wouldn't you love to be able to go back in a time machine and experience that moment? They're going to show you this in a cartoonish way. Notice that that was very much done in a scientific way. They probably ended up doing something like they're showing here in another way of thought, but they'll do it in a cartoonish type way. Eep. Notice how, if you have any experience at all of hearing music, pretty much whatsoever, that you will have a knowledge of understanding, at least to the point that whenever an improper note is played, that you recognize it. I'd like to mention now we could put the whole song in a different key and base it where it holds that note within it, within one of those scales that we talked about, and it could fit. So there's all this music theorem and everything else, but in its basic essence, everything that we know and every scale that goes along with it goes along with this, and it's sacred geometry. We'll break out in a minute, but first let's break into a jam session.
What's going on?
It's a jam session.
Cassandra, boy, put it down.
Uh-oh.
Well, I'll be a concentrating fan.
It was our old friend Pythagoras who discovered that the pentagram was full of mathemagic.
Magic? Well, you know that this is a magic emblem. And if I let it roll over a little more, then that's that ooh. And if you have any age on you at all, you remember all the old album covers and stuff of all the heavy metal crap that had it on with it and everything, because it was a big fad. Everybody was into it that time and so on of it. It's the pentagram. Inside the middle of it is a pentagon. Now, strangely, it goes with Venus and so on, and we've talked about that in a lot of other videos, but the reason it goes with Venus is if you were to watch Venus traverse along the sky and do its normal path, it takes 8 years, which is the reason the 8-petaled or double 4 star is also connected with her at other times. And what does it make? What goes on with it? Well, during that path that it makes, it actually, like an old Etch-a-Sketch, draws out this exact symbol. And this is something right here he's fixing to show. I tried to explain in, oh man, was it the second one? Well, the second one where I was in music? Or no, it was the other one where I started talking about music and I said it goes with the pentagram. Let's see how that works together. Watch how this breaks into sections and see if it doesn't go right back to that lyre, that ancient guitar, if you will. Kitara, they called them.
The two shorter lines combined exactly equal the third. And this line shows the magic proportions of the famous golden section.
Aha.
The second and third lines exactly equal the fourth. Once again, we have the golden section. But this is only the beginning. Hidden within the pentagram is a secret for creating a golden rectangle, which the Greeks admired for its beautiful proportions and magic qualities. The star contains the golden rectangle many times over.
So we can see it there, and now we're at a position where we're actually just looking at the center of a star that's left over. When he's talking about how it can, from it, make this rectangles that are the golden ratio rectangles. But there's also triangles that are all going along with this, and those triangles can be broken down with the Pythagorean theorem that we were talking about in the other videos about how that works out too. And in fact, every little section, and you'll find he's exploding it bigger and bigger and bigger, so we're going through a tunnel of that ideal and thought here. There they are. The pentagon. The pentagram. There they are.
It's a most remarkable shape. It can mathematically reproduce itself indefinitely. All these rectangles have exactly the same proportions.
In relation to size. Now he's accredited with this, but we've talked about how just the Sumerians already had this going on in trigonometry and all these things, and this is how you break up a plot of land and the MEs and stuff that they talked about in ancient days. That was secret, that they didn't want to get out in some way. This is some of that knowledge that's right here in it. But then find something else inside that same situation, because we're kind of looking down a tunnel here.
This figure
Smaller and
also
smaller.
contains a magic spiral that repeats the proportions of the golden section into infinity.
It's known as the Fibonacci sequence. And he
To
said
the Greeks,
infinity.
the golden rectangle represented a mathematical...
Now you saw them inside of each other right there. I wish I could just go right back to it. Let's see if I can do it without screwing up. For if we look at this thing as it goes from this type of tunnel, time tunnel if you will, and we go to the next sequence here.
to infinity. To the Greeks,
He said to infinity. To the Greeks. Well, to a lot of people, this image here is a portal or infinity. Have you ever taken a mirror and stuck a mirror up to a mirror? You know, you're back a little bit from it, but inside you see a smaller version of yourself off the mirror, off yourself, and you look at the mirror in the image, and if you get them lined up, zoom. I remember getting giggles as a kid finding it whenever I was taking one like my mom or my sister used to use and getting it there, and then different angles, and you could make it zoom to the left and zoom to the right like it is a little bit here and things, but you could see infinity. And then if you looked real close, you saw infinity in the mirrors, but you saw yourself staring at yourself geeking over it too, like you're looking in a Christmas bulb, and it was kind of like, ha 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 ha, but yet, ha ha ha, this is infinity.
the golden rectangle represented a mathematical law of beauty. We find it in their classical architecture. The Parthenon, perhaps one of the most famous of early Greek buildings, contains many golden rectangles.
They're all over the place.
These same golden proportions are also found in their sculpture.
And this is known as a carotid column. This is where it's a person. It's actually a column, and then they carve a column out of into a person, and they have them stand up in between it. I used them in Dungeons and Dragons quite a bit and everything. Sometimes they were sentient and they were smart. They were trapped here doing this. They were in ancient ruins. They had to do this, that, and the other. Sometimes they're on different doorways. And there's carotid and caryatid columns. We won't get into that. But notice how just the proportions on the overall is showing you that there's infinity. But it can also be broken down Fibonacci. And infinity. And there again we have infinity. It draws your eye to it. It draws your eye all over it and continually up. People still marvel on how fantastic Greek art is and how it came out of nowhere almost. We always talk about the expression of like popcorn. It just popped up. People were doing bas reliefs and so on, so it's like you were embedded in the stone and they were able to pull that out of it. That's incredible in itself. And then to make the background flat again as if you projected out of it. Make no bones about it, that's incredible. But what they did here was take somebody from a regal pose that was always the same thing and always this, that, and the other that people had somewhat perfected, and they took it into a natural pose. The sway of a woman, the shape of a woman, things like that. It wasn't all just boom. Sure, they're a little bit Greekized or ancient Photoshop, if you will, but it gave something to shoot for. And again, then again, a lot of these people are deified or the gods, goddesses, so they would have that look of them. I always thought it was marvelous. One thing that for sure was that the way that they made clothing and fabrics drape over them and silk down and everything, that was like the thing that people quite often looked past. Also, I made a video recently where we find out, well, people, all these, oh, marble. No, they were mostly, all of them were painted. Their eyes were painted in, their hair, all kinds of things. Yeah. It's in another video, though. Look it up in my stuff. You can just go to my channel and then click videos on that tab and just go down, find something that grabs your attention.
In the centuries that followed, the golden rectangle dominated the idea of beauty and architecture throughout the Western world. The Cathedral of Notre Dame is an outstanding example. The Renaissance painters knew this secret well. Today, the golden rectangle is very much a part of our modern world.
Yet we also, in a lot of our buildings, Capitol buildings and things like that, actually retain that old architecture, don't we? Well, it's kind of weird to show that whenever we flatten something out and take all the thru out of it and make something more like this, and reasonable to be able to build on this scale and the way it is, that it still retains that fact. In fact, it goes with structurability and all kinds of things. And where did we figure this out? Well, they figured it out that plants have it, and pine cones have it, and seashells and things have it, and all kinds of things have it. In fact, you have it in your proportion of your body. Vitruvian Man shows you this effect, and it goes on and on and on. In fact, our solar system is based on it. Now, it gets kicked off a little bit due to sizes of planets and weights and so on like that, but it still has that effect. Whenever you look at not something that can be deviated like that, but on a grander scale, like the galaxy, that's got that same spiral. So understand that you can take something as huge as our galaxy and look down on it and see that swirl, and then take that image and say, I can find that in the top of a pine cone. I can find that here, I can find that there. In fact, the measurements that are radiating at certain points and so on end up being measurements that you can find in your body. And that's what we base the old scale on, not millimeters and so on, but inches and feet and so on. And people have always had a question, why is it this and your foot's not that big? But what is this deal? Well, it's measurements worked out in a different way, sections, the mile itself and so on. I've talked about this in other ancient videos.
Modern painters have rediscovered the magic of these proportions.
So we see the Fibonacci sequence running out of that too. And like I said, you know, you find it in the darndest places, but maybe it actually surrounds you. For here's Vitruvian Man, and he's based on the same concept here. And the Renaissance that went on. I've talked before a little bit about this huge gap because they had steam little engines worked out and all these things and all of this knowledge that's worked out, and why it got held back for so many thousands of years. We've been sitting in a fog for like 2,000 years here, we just came out of recently, and by being able to put together certain components of that, we're able to make the Industrial Revolution and rapidly go into space. We're at now computers and all this thing that whenever I was a kid, you know, they had a tricorder in this crap. People's phones nowadays blow that away. A tricorder could do or three things. Woo! Well, your phone can't detect people in a distance and so on like that, but it can do a whole lot of other things. And hell, we haven't got to the age of Star Trek yet, but I thought we'd be closer than now for sure. There's another effect too where, let's see, it's at the end of the video here. Let's see if I can find it before I just go jumping around to different places. And it shows you that on a drum, or using a drum, that by making different tones, it will actually cause, if you have something like sand on the top of a drum, that you find out it makes symbols and patterns. And patterns that are well easily seen. And they basically have hooked up a little sound thing that echoes through a bucket up through the bottom of a tambourine without the tambourines on it, or a drum head that's here, and he just simply poured salt on it, and she goes, ooh, and watch it change here, and it'll lock up to give you a symbol. And different tones bring about different patterns. And people have noticed that. And you wonder, well, how long ago did people notice something like this, that if they ooh on something that has any vibratory effect to it, that will actually cause it to look at it change, and it forms here. So it's pretty neat. It shows you that some of these things could easily have been seen in the way back machine. And you see it there with this pattern. It's got squares and bubbles around it, 4 in the center and like a clove and everything. And he's telling you here, well, you can find these patterns in nature everywhere, and places like tortoise shells and other places. Again, I found this in a piece of Robert Seffer's work, and I've said it to you. So again, this is a verifier situation, if you will. In his video, he goes into an ideal where this man had used it and ultrasound techniques to try to use to figure out how to kill cancer and cause problems. And that they didn't really have it figured out, but he supposedly had something figured out, and then others later tried to mess with it and didn't really get much out of it. So I don't know what happened to Walt Disney and stuff that we're here lately a lot, but apparently he used to know something about Masons. People even said that he had something to do with it. But regardless of that, you can easily find that some of this knowledge, sacred knowledge here, used to be in old cartoons, something that probably would be shown to your kids at school and so on, along with Johnny Appleseed and all those old shows that I don't think's going on anymore, huh? But Donald knows. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.